It's a brand new world. All right, we are here to discuss your new book that just came out yesterday, and we're holding up at the same time. A Perfect Hand, which I have in black and white, and you have in living color, and it is delightful.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I actually, I want to talk about the marriage plot.
Okay.
What got you thinking about a marriage plot in the first place?
Okay. So, well, first of all, that is my obsession, right? Like, I I I started reading Jane Austen when I was a kid, and it was because I would ride my bicycle to the library, and when I probably this was like about 11 or 12, I would ride my bike to the library every Saturday, and I would fill up my bike basket with books and ride home and read them all week. And that I became obsessed with these books that weren't even shelved. They were on a revolving rack by the
Yeah.
librarian, and they were all like bodice rippers, right? They had like busty girls, and they were like mass market paperbacks, and then like a gorgeous, dark, and also very distant man on the cover. And I would just get like 20 of them and read them during the week. And at one point, this librarian is looking at me and she's been watching me, right, for week after week. And she comes up and she's got a mass market paperback and she hands it to me. She said, I think you might like this. And it looked like the others, except like the girl in the pink dress was super flat chested. That was literally the only difference. So I took it home and I opened the first page and it was Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
And my
yes.
head just went like, "Phew." And I honestly think that was the first time that I really understood the difference between really good writing and just, basic commercial writing. So, but it satisfied that same desire for a marriage happy ending. The last scene is everybody walks down the aisle that those bodice rippers did, because that was the
Right.
same plot with those. So, and I have loved, I mean, I reread Jane Austen almost every year. My favorite is Persuasion. I love Pride and Prejudice. I have a harder time with Emma. I cannot stand Mansfield Park. I find that Fanny is just such a drip. Um, I still reread it anyway. But I also love, like, I mean, any movie with, a ball gown and a marriage at the end is just my complete obsession. But then as I grew older, obviously, I became a more sophisticated reader and started to enjoy like kind of anti-marriage plots,
Right.
like Middlemarch or something.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's been 9 years since my last book and a dozen years since my last novel, and it's not, I mean, it's because of Hollywood, let's be honest. I was doing
Right.
so much, like, you could, if people knew how many pilots I sold that didn't get produced, it would be such a source of shame. I can never admit the number, 13. But
It's
Hollywood,
normal. It's normal.
it's just so crazy. I think I kind of win the prize, but yeah. I mean, I made a good living, but it like sucked up a decade of my creative life with very little to show for it. I mean, Unbelievable was great, but like other than that. Um, but I was still starting to write novels. Every time I would sit down at my desk, I would like start a novel. I'd write 20 pages, I'd write 50 pages, and it would just kind of run aground. And I remember there was one day when I was lying on the couch and I was like moaning and moaning, like, oh, my career's over. I can't figure out what to write. I have no ideas. I always said ideas were so cheap, and now I have none. And my oldest daughter was passing by,
Sophie. Yeah.
Sophie, and she goes, oh, God, Mom, what you need to do is you need to write the kind of book that you love. That's what you always tell me. You love marriage plot. You love anything that takes place in a manor house with like a lady's maid. But this is what you need to do. Don't write the story of the Lord and Lady. Write the story of the servants who fall in love. And I was just like,
Sophie said that in passing.
just in passing. And I was like, my head exploded. And like in my memory, the first thing I do is like sit down and it all comes pouring out, but that can't actually be true. But
Right,
it
right.
just sort of exploded out of me. And it's like that thing, that happens when you're writing the right thing. And it just kind of like you lock in and you just zoom. And I caught the voice right away, which is the hardest part about writing fiction. And when you catch it, it's so exhilarating. But then this really weird thing happened, which is I was writing this kind of book and it was entertaining and it was really satisfying, but it was light. And this is not a dark book. It is a light book. But I was feeling this like craving for a little more depth. And at that moment, October 7th happened. and I've been doing
Oh,
Palestinian.
you started
Right.
writing. Oh, wow,
4.
okay.
So, and I have been doing like Palestinian, I've been doing
Mm,
Palestinian rights work for decades. And I was laid waste. First of all, because there were so many people that I knew from the peace movement who were in those kibbutzim on the border who were killed or taken hostage, and friends of friends or relatives of people. And then also because I knew it was coming and I knew the horror that was coming. And I couldn't work for a while. I just was sort of glued to this nightmare.
and I just
And
wanna say that you are Israeli, your family is
yeah,
Israeli. Yeah,
my family is my family's actually Canadian, but moved to Israel. I was born in Israel, which is a lot of reason for the fact that I had to spend so much time doing Palestinian rights because I have a deep
right.
sense of guilt and shame. Um, but so but I knew I needed to get back to this novel because I was craving it and I needed to. But as soon as I turned back to it, I had this insight that there was a depth to it that I could find and that I needed to find. And I'm not sure I ever would have gotten to that level if it hadn't been for that break and if it hadn't been for sort of what happened to my state of mind after that started. And so I returned to the book. And again, I had this incredible feeling of like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing the right thing. And it just kind of zoomed. And there's a big twist at the ending
Yeah,
that I
I love
will
the ending.
say I didn't really know was coming.
Well,
And I,
I was gonna say that one of the things I was thinking as so she gets really into the suffragist movement, right?
yeah.
And I pictured you carrying that bag of rice on the Palestinian border. I'm like, she must have been writing this at the
Yeah,
same time that this was happening because it was seeping into the pages. And then I
exactly. I mean,
thought,
there was
yeah, when I read the twist, I was like, okay, this is the twist came because of your activism.
I think so too. Like, I knew I wanted to write a book that was entertaining and in many ways light and that would be delightful. Like, that's my goal is that people would be delighted. But at the same time, it wouldn't be true to me if it didn't have that kind of larger, deeper story. Um, And yeah, it's so funny when you get something right. I mean, you must have this experience too, when suddenly something happens in your book and you realize, oh my God, I didn't even know this,
Yeah.
but I have laid the track the whole way. And it must have been subconsciously because you go back and you're like, oh, and I did that, and I did that, and I did that. And oh my God, this is the right thing because it's all so it's this kind of magical thing. I'm not a huge believer in magical thinking, but when it works, you're kind of like, oh, well, that was really interesting. That's a kinda gift from the creative gods.
Well, here's what I wanna do, and I wanna be very careful because I don't wanna give away the twist at the end of the book. Right. So, but what I wanna ask you is because of that twist, I just started thinking about your marriage to Michael,
Mhm.
which I held up as I was getting divorced, or as I would even say before that, as I was trying to decide whether or
Uh-huh.
not to get divorced. I held up your marriage. I mean, we know each other socially and as
Yeah. Oh, we've known
really,
each other
really good
for
friends
so long.
since 2003. Your marriage to me was what I aspired to. It was love-filled, it was kindness, it was very much, a mutual, affection towards each other and a mutual care of the children, and a very I mean, I'm looking from the outside looking in, but it seemed very 50-50. I mean, you guys really
Yeah.
knew how to do marriage well.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And
like, let's be clear, it hasn't been easy. I mean, I'm a difficult
no, no
person. I
marriages.
suffer from a mental illness. I can be impossible to, I can fly off the handle. I mean, my husband has like the patience of the gods. But then also like, he's got his own issues and it's, he comes from, everybody's family is really complicated, but he had a very absent father and so that's given him all sorts of different insecurities. And so it has not been the easiest thing. But on the other hand, that coming from that place of like a real conscious devotion to mutuality, that we were going to be in this together, that leaving wasn't, an option, but more important, like the guy checking out domestically wasn't an option.
Mhm.
Um, that I mean, I could if I had been with another guy, I don't know how that would have worked, but I had real expectations of what this kind of egalitarian relationship was gonna be, and, it just never occurred to me that it would be any different. But, like, I've been with men I've gotten on a lot of boyfriends, and it wouldn't have been like that, and I can see a kind of I see this alternative universe in which I had been in a much more typical marriage, and I would have been miserable, and I would have wanted out. I mean, like, you did everything in your marriage, and I don't even know how you lasted as long as you did. Like,
I
I
just wanted
mean
it to
everything.
work.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, professionally and personally and with the I mean, like, it really was this crazy and, and Paul's a great guy and I like him, blah, blah, blah. But it really was a remarkable, it was it's so hard to see someone who is a deeply committed feminist, who deserves and wants to be in a mutually supportive relationship, stuck in this thing that she never expected. Like, you didn't expect that, right? You were this
No, I don't think
hard-driving career
no.
woman.
I don't think any woman goes into a marriage. I mean, and this we can talk about the twist at the end without talking about the twist at the end, but I don't think any woman goes into a marriage expecting it to blow up. I mean, you have hopes for everything. You have hopes for egalitarian marriage. And certainly I was coming from a place where I grew up in the 70s. I
Right,
grew up where Title IX would become a thing where
right,
I am woman, hear me roar, free to be
right.
you and me. I mean,
Yeah,
I really believed in Princess Atalanta, and then here I
me
was
too.
stuck in a marriage where I was I might as well have been in 1950s, right? It might as well have been a 1950s marriage, and that to me, that marriage plot was not tenable.
It's so interesting because I feel like, I've had this thought so many times, like, all those guys standing next to us at the Take Back the Night marches in college, like, well, pounding the drums, like, how did
Yeah.
they end up just like their fathers? How did
I don't
they
know.
end up living these 1950s, right? It's like, dudes, for fuck's sake, you were supposed to be different. And I do think, like, there's this way that the limerence, right? Like, the sense of longing, romantic longing that is so
Yes.
emotionally satisfying, and I'm gonna turn this into a conversation about my favorite topic, I am, um, that we see like, I've watched Heated Rivalry now almost 11 times all the way through. I think I
Oh
hit
my
my wall. I think I'm like, "Okay, that's enough." But
yeah.
I see that as this really interesting commentary on contemporary relationships because it is a pure expression of the longing that you see in something like Persuasion, Jane Austen's
Yes.
Persuasion, and that I was trying to also achieve in A Perfect Hand. But it works in Heated Rivalry because it's two men. Like, if you can imagine that show where it was one male character longing for an emotionally a one woman a female character longing for an emotionally unavailable man, you wouldn't wanna watch
It
that,
wouldn't work.
right?
No, it
And
wouldn't
also
work at all.
because it expresses so much of what we see, like, in actual relationships,
Yeah.
way too much. But why it works in Heated Rivalry and why it's so emotionally satisfying is because it's 2 men, it lifts the gender politics element right out, so you can experience limerence, you can experience the
Yeah,
joy
liver.
and satisfaction of longing with or limericks, without that frustration of being in a marriage that is enacting like the same plot as those gothic romances that
Right.
I loved when I was a little girl, but like, would you want to live those? No. And I wanted to write a marriage plot that you would actually could see yourself living and want to live. So that is what I was going for in
And
this.
then I have some questions also about there's so much there's so many good details about what it was like being a maid, a lady's maid back then.
Yeah.
Where did you do your research? Where did you get your research from?
So I do this thing every time I start a book. I buy research materials and books. It's almost like a compulsion and I assemble a library.
Mhm.
It's like a big long shelf. I mean, right now, if you look at my studio, my library is like uh wooden boat building, dead babies, Victorian England, Palestine. It's so crazy. It's like sometimes I wonder, like the Venn diagram of my interests is basically me. I don't
Yeah,
know who's
yeah,
following me on all these
yeah.
tangents. Me.
Quilting,
Um,
quilting.
quilting, quilting, quilting.
Yeah.
But so I got all these books, and what I found that was so exciting were these guidebooks for servants that were written during Victorian times. And
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite one was this guidebook for ladies' maids, and it's so specific. It has everything from like how to rinse out stains, how to make cosmetics, what kind of church going you should invest in, what tone of voice to use to different people in the house, terms of address. And it's this like, this volume that I imagine that ladies gave to their servants to say,
Yeah.
like, this is how we prepare you. And so I used a lot of that. There are great sources of books about like, the upstairs, downstairs in Victorian England. Um, I'm really interested in kind of the earthy details. Like, I
Like,
wanted
what do the underwear smell like?
right. What does indoor smell like? How do you deal with all the effluvia? Like if this is before Tampax, like what did you do when you worked for a woman who's just like fucking bleeding all over her underwear, right? What were those bandages that they used to like use those pads made out of? So I really dug into the woods on that, and that was really, really fun. Really fun.
Well, it was
If I were
really
a
well
different kind
rendered.
of person, I would have written like a master's thesis on women's hygiene in Victorian England.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, after all this is said and done, Sophie gets the book. Obviously, you give it to Sophie.
Yeah.
What did she say? And by the way, you started writing this, you said, around October 7th, but it
Yeah.
seems to just, like, came out of nowhere, like
Yeah, it came, the way that I tend to work is that if it's working, it goes fast.
yeah.
Like my book Love and Other Impossible Pursuits, or as I like to call it, Love and Other Impossible to Remember Titles, not my title, imposed on me by my
I have that
publisher.
I have so many of
Um,
those, yeah.
It's crazy. People who aren't in publishing can't believe, like, for Love and Other Impossible Pursuits, they gave me a huge I called it Crossing the Park. They didn't like that. They gave me a huge list of titles, and I looked at the list, and this is marketing and my editor, and I said, "Okay, I will accept any of these except Love and Other Impossible Pursuits because I don't even know what the fuck that means." That's the title.
That's what they chose.
Anyway, why was I talking about that? Oh, I wrote the
So
first draft of
Sophie.
that in yeah, I wrote the first draft of that in 2 weeks at McDowell,
Wow.
this writer's colony. So, like, when it comes for me, it just kind of pours out.
Yeah.
And when Sophie gave me that idea, it really did pour out. Um, she she started reading it and gave me all sorts of nice props, but then her life got a little more complicated. But now she's listening to the audiobook, and that is going great. So,
Who
and
does the audiobook? I'm actually curious
oh
about
my
that.
god. Oh my god. This, like, oops, sorry. There's so many disappointments. If you're a mid-list writer, like your career is just a series of disappointments and then fury at yourself for being disappointed because you're so lucky. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You get to do this for a living. A great living, but you get to do it for a
Yeah,
living. Stop whining.
yeah.
A friend of mine has this phrase that I've been using a lot. It's no whining on the yacht. So I've been saying that to myself over and over again. No whining on the
Yeah.
yacht. Um, but uh, but the moment that made I don't care how much this book well, obviously I care if it sells, but, like,
Right.
it when they asked me about the audiobook, I jokingly said that I wanted Juliet Stevenson, the actress, Truly Madly Deeply,
Yeah.
I wanted her to narrate it because she has done all the Jane Austen, all the George Eliot, she's done all the Virginia Woolf, and she is brilliant. She's the best audiobook reader out there, bar none. And I said it almost like a joke because again, mid-list writer, they're not gonna pay some like actress to do it, right? I'm gonna get stuck with like, you know, I'm not gonna name names, but I'm listening to an audiobook now with the worst reader in the world, including mispronouncing Jim Crow as Jim Crow.
Mm.
And there was a character from Omaha, and I'm like, Omaha,
Omaha.
Omaha, Omaha,
Omaha.
but I never thought they would agree. And they were like, oh, good idea. And this audiobook, I never read my own work when I'm done with it, except when I'm on tour and I have to. I never listen to my audiobooks. I'm listening to this audiobook because it's like a work of art. It's so exhilarating. She does all the voices. She does the
Oh, I
different
can't wait.
accents. She does different ages of characters. So like there's the character is young, they sound young, and when they get older, they sound it's a fucking dream come true. I am so thrilled. I made her this really, really complex quilt, the hardest quilt I've ever made in my life. It took forever. Um, and I mailed it to her in the US mail. Stupidest decision I ever made. And it is stuck at
Oh,
her
no.
local post office because they say I owe tariffs. But I went online to the Royal Mail website. I paid the tariff, the customs fee. And so when you click on the link, it still says customs fee owed. But when you click to pay, I would pay it 20 times. It says you've already paid, but they still won't deliver it. I'm like, please, please, please
Oh,
deliver it.
no.
Please. Because I'm going to have to remake it and it will like destroy me.
All right, before we go,
Yeah.
I want you to give me one piece of advice that you would have given to your 20 or 25-year-old self about marriage that you now know that you didn't know then. I know I'm just cashing you off.
No, no, I have to think about this. I have to think about this. Um, okay. I would have told myself, and I actually did this. I would say create a narrative of the moment of most intense romance. Like tell yourself a story and even write it down because being able to go to that moment in the difficult times is so sustaining. Like when everybody thinks in the course of marriage, at least 1,500,000 times, I fucking hate you, right? You're like, I fucking hate you. But when you have that thought or you say it out loud, don't do that. But if you have to,
Yeah.
if it happens, if you can go back to that narrative in your mind that like you can tell yourself the story of your first meeting or the first moment you fell in love or something from that time, it can bring you back to that sort of power of narrative. It can actually re-immerse you in that moment. And that is really sustaining.
And what
It
is
really
that
is.
story for you? What is that story for you when you go
Okay.
back?
Okay. So this is a story of how we met. I was living in New York. I was a young lawyer. I spent a year working at this big fancy law firm called Debevoise and Plimpton. I was in my Ally McBeal phase. I
Wait,
had to pay back my
by the
loan.
way, Townsend worked at Debevoise too. Did you know that?
What?
Yeah, my
We're more
partner,
or less the same age. He probably
he worked
worked
there in
there.
his 30s, I think.
All right, we have to compare notes.
Yeah, okay.
Um, so uh, so I was like wearing like little mini skirts and the whole thing. And I was dating this very religious Catholic guy. And
You?
yeah. And I really liked him. I picked him up at the Roxy one night. I was like, only I could like go out clubbing and pick up a very religious Catholic guy. He was a professor of economics. Yeah, that's who I picked up. And I like said to myself, okay, I can do this, right? Like I can go to church and maybe raise Catholic children. And like I went to mass with him. I tried to take communion. They don't let you do that, by the way.
No, they don't.
Unless
Mm-mm.
they have to wear like a little white dress first and do some stuff. Um, and so I was like really trying. I was really trying. And he just one day broke up with me. And
Oh,
I'm like, wait a fucking second. You broke up with me and I went to church and I went home and I was like ranting and raving. I'm like, fucking that fucking piece of shit. I can't. Who, by the way, is a lovely guy. We're still friends.
yeah.
And my roommate had her best friend over and he was like, I mean, I know a Jewish guy who'll date you. So I was like,
That was
call
it?
him up, call him up. So he calls up Michael, who had just ended, he'd been divorced. He had been divorced not long before. He had one serious relationship after his divorce that had just broken up. And um, Michael was like, I don't do blind dates. And John said, well, you're a loss. And he was like, okay, wait a second. So Michael called me up and I made a joke about William Kunstler during the course of this call. And he was like, oh, I like that girl. So we made a plan to go out and I went to work and I was going to Bloomingdale's with my friend Peter Shabakoff. and we were leaving Bloomingdale's, and you remember those big brown bags? I don't know if they
Yes,
still have
yeah.
them.
I think they still
Um,
have them, yeah.
yeah, and so I said, "Oh, I have this blind date, this guy named Michael Chabon," and Peter literally dropped his bags, and he said, "Michael Chabon? Why would he ever go out with you?" And I was like, "What?" So we ran back to work, and there's this woman who has since become like the most preeminent art law scholar in the country, Amy Adler. And I said, "Amy, do you know who this guy is?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, but he's gay. He broke up his editor's 12-year marriage, a relationship. I mean, he's gay." And I'm like, "What?" So I went and I bought his 2 books and I that he had at the time, Mysteries of Pittsburgh and A Model World, and I read them. And they at least one of them was dedicated to his ex-wife. And I'm like, so um I get ready for this date. I borrowed this a friend of mine had, it's like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. She had this perfect pair of jeans that I borrowed and a white like a white button-down shirt. Guess I probably look like a waiter now that I think about it, but I had like jeans and a white button-down shirt and a perfect camisole. And he was 15 minutes late to pick me up, and I do not do late. I do not. I was getting more and more pissed off. But I was living in Stuyvesant Town, and finally my buzzer goes off, and I cannot buzz him in because at the time Stuyvesant Town was not fancy. And so I had to like go downstairs, and he was standing in there's like 2 panes of like there's the front door and then there's an inner door, and it's both are of glass. And I saw him standing between those 2 panes of glass, and he's holding a bouquet of irises, like just a bodega irises. And I looked at him and I had this thought, "Oh, now I can stop dating." Because I knew, I mean, I don't even believe in that, but I knew that second. We had the most incredible date. Our first kiss was on the Bowery. I did not sleep with him on the first date, which I hadn't done in a long time. Like, that was not my normal activity.
Yeah.
Um, and then about 3 weeks later, we spent every weekend together. He was living up in the Hudson Valley. 3 weeks later, we were in bed, and apparently in the middle of the night, I turned over and I said, "So, Michael Chabon, are you going to marry me?" And in the morning, when I woke up, he told me, and I was so like I didn't even know the guy. It was 3 weeks, right? I was so embarrassed, so embarrassed, so embarrassed. And then finally I said, "Well, what did you say?" And he said, "I said yes." And then we
Wow.
got married.
Wow.
And that's the like,
Wow.
even just telling you that story now, like, I'm feeling this incredible rush of emotion, and he made a playlist. He made, like, a summer '92 playlist, and he hadn't made it for me, he would make a playlist a mixtape back then. Every summer, he would laboriously create a mixtape, and that summer '92 mixtape now playlist, I just have to put it on, and I'm, like, right in that
Yeah.
instant. So whenever we're having a fight, like, if one or the other of us remembers to put on, you know, September Girls, I'll just be right there.
Well, I will tell you this. I just saw you last week for your family event. Your son was graduating. It was a beautiful moment. Anytime I'm with you guys, anytime I'm with the Waldman Chabon couple or children or all of you together, it feels like home to me.
And I feel the same way. We've had such incredible family. Well, first of all, it's so wonderful to me to be with you in this incredible, loving, supportive relationship, and one that, like, it's also, like, the best of Deb. Because you've embraced I mean, this is a complicated situation you're in, right?
Oh, you mean my relationship? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
love and embrace Townsend's first
Wife.
wife, who is, profoundly ill with Alzheimer's, and you've become such a huge part of her life, and she's become such a huge part of yours, and just to be with that family is so amazing, but also, like, all the events of my life are chronicled in the last 2 decades, like the Thanksgivings we spent together, my daughter's wedding, you took all the pictures for my daughter's wedding, so it really is it's so wonderful, and it used to be like, "Oh, we're gonna have to deal with, like, okay, I know what I have to deal with, spend time with Deb, so I'm just gonna have to deal with it," and now it's just pure joy,
It is so
pure
joyful.
joy.
It is
Yeah.
so joyful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. The book is amazing. Hold it up again. I wanna see it again.
Yeah.
All right.
Help a
Yes.
mid-list writer out. Go get it.
Yeah. A
And get
Perfect
the
Hand.
audiobook, it's so good.
All right. I'm gonna end the recording. Stay on for a second. Hold on one second. End
Yeah.
recording.
Oh, we did that perfectly. It's exactly 30 minutes.